Imagine a massive volcanic eruption so big it kills every single person on Earth. We have all seen the movie about it, but how accurate is it? Welcome to my channel. And today we are answering the extraordinary question, can you burn Yellowstone? This supervolcano has already devastated our planet once before, and the idea that we could burn it even more goes beyond terrifying. So let's get into it. Yellowstone National Park in the United States is home to the Yellowstone Caldera, also known as the Yellowstone Supervolcano. This beast is responsible for some of the largest volcanic eruptions in the history of our planet. But don't worry, because according to the United States Geological Survey, or USGS, an eruption is not imminent. Yellowstone's most recent eruption happened around 640,000 years ago, and it created the Huckleberry Ridge eruption deposit, which is now part of Yellowstone's vast magma chamber. While the most recent eruption was pretty large, it is just one of many explosive eruptions from this supervolcano over the past 2 million years. In 1985, the USGS started the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, or YVO, to monitor the volcano, which is considered one of the most dangerous in the world due to its size, past activity, and proximity to populated areas. The area surrounding Yellowstone is monitored with the help of GPS instruments to track any changes in the land, seismometers to detect earthquakes, and various other monitoring techniques. As I said, they are keeping a close eye on things. So what exactly would happen if Yellowstone erupted again, and could it be burned? Let's take a look at what happened in 1985 when it last erupted. The eruption lasted 2 days, during which time there were 300 earthquakes, including one massive earthquake measuring 7.3 on the Richter scale. Magma filled with gas escaped through vents in the ground in an event that produced 24 cubic kilometers of ash and pumice. It was truly incredible. While the explosion itself was powerful enough to be seen from Seattle and Portland, as well as parts of Canada, the Pacific Northwest experienced very little fallout because the winds carried most of the ash northeast toward North Dakota, where it rained down over an area of about 640,000 square kilometers. But while the immediate damage was restricted to the immediate vicinity, the effects soon spread far and wide. Pyroclastic flows surged down valleys, spreading hot gas and volcanic matter over huge swaths of land. The effects of the eruption were felt as far away as Utah, Idaho, and western Wyoming. Lava flows moved down river valleys, creating new lakes and reshaping the landscape. Hot ash descended on forests, igniting massive wildfires. The fires burned through 375,000 hectares of forest and grassland and left behind charred trees. Some were still standing 100 days after the eruption, creating what is now known as the Black Forest. But despite the devastation caused by falling debris and scorching temperatures, life returned to the region relatively quickly. Within a year, grasses and wildflowers carpeted the landscape and wildlife returned to the area. In fact, the ecosystem seemed almost unfazed by the dramatic blast. However, Yellowstone's impact went beyond the park's boundaries. Ash fell over Montana and Wyoming, covering farmlands and killing livestock. The ash even made its way to the Great Plains in the northern edges of Mexico. This eruption had global implications. It created a fine layer of ash across the entire northern hemisphere, causing darkness and an eerie orange glow to appear in the daytime sky. Global temperatures plummeted by an average of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Plants froze and fish suffocated in oxygen-poor water. It was disastrous. In short, the eruption in 1985 devastated the region, disrupted the lives of people hundreds of kilometers away, and altered the climate and environment of the entire northern hemisphere. And that was just a small version of what this supervolcano is capable of. To put Yellowstone's power into perspective, we only need to look back further in time to see what it did to our planet just 60,000 years ago. Around 640,000 years ago, Yellowstone unleashed its fury in the form of the Mesa Falls eruption, which remains the largest eruption in the last 2 million years. The eruption produced 2,500 cubic kilometers of ash and debris and covered much of the western United States. This event had a significant impact on global climate patterns, which may have contributed to the extinction of several species and helped to shape the course of human evolution. And finally, the most massive eruption in Yellowstone's recent history, the Lava Creek eruption, occurred around 630,000 years ago. This supereruption released 2,500 cubic kilometers of ash and debris, blanketing the entire Rocky Mountain region in a thick layer of ash and sending pyroclastic flows surging down the valleys. The blast was so powerful that it changed the shape of the land, creating the Yellowstone Caldera. These eruptions are incredibly powerful and widespread. But does that mean that Yellowstone can't be burned? Well, not necessarily. Humans have managed to burn many things that many people thought couldn't be burned. So anything is possible, right? Burning something doesn't necessarily mean setting it on fire. Burning can also refer to the process of removing vegetation from land, usually by cutting or burning it. So while you can't burn Yellowstone National Park in the traditional sense, you could theoretically cut or clear all of the vegetation from the area. However, this wouldn't be an easy feat as Yellowstone covers an area of over 8,900 square kilometers. That's bigger than the country of Belgium. Plus, it contains forests, grasslands, rivers, lakes, and hot springs, making it impossible to access certain areas and burn them. But let's just assume that we can somehow overcome these obstacles and burn all of the vegetation in Yellowstone. Would it do any good? Well, maybe. By removing all of the vegetation from the land, we might be able to stop the spread of invasive species. Invasive species are plants and animals that are not native to an ecosystem and can cause environmental or economic harm. They can outcompete native species for resources, disrupt food webs, and alter habitats. In Yellowstone, invasive species such as cheatgrass and non-native fish have been causing problems. Cheatgrass is a highly flammable annual grass that has overtaken much of Yellowstone's native bunchgrass. It grows quickly and spreads easily, leading to more frequent and intense wildfires. On the other hand, non-native fish such as rainbow trout and brown trout were introduced to Yellowstone's rivers and lakes in the early 1900s. These fish were popular among anglers and were thought to be beneficial to the local economy. However, they quickly became a problem as they competed with native species for food and habitat. They also preyed on native species such as the Yellowstone cutthroat trout, pushing it closer to extinction. Removing all of the vegetation in Yellowstone wouldn't completely solve the problem of invasive species, but it might make it easier to manage them. For example, without the fuel provided by cheatgrass, wildfires might become less frequent and intense, giving native plants a chance to recover. Similarly, removing non-native fish from rivers and lakes would allow native species to thrive. But what about all of the wildlife that would be affected by such drastic measures? Animals such as bison, elk, and wolves rely on the vegetation and habitat within Yellowstone to survive. Removing all of the vegetation would likely lead to a mass exodus of animals, causing a collapse in the park's biodiversity. What about the hot springs that Yellowstone is famous for? These springs are created by the interaction between groundwater and heat from the Earth's core. While they are a major tourist attraction, they also play an important role in the park's ecosystem. The hot springs provide habitat for a variety of microorganisms, which in turn provide food for larger animals. By burning all of the vegetation in Yellowstone, we would be disrupting this delicate balance and causing widespread ecological chaos. Now let's shift our attention to another aspect of burning Yellowstone: nuclear war. Yellowstone sits atop a highly active seismic zone, and it's no secret that nuclear warheads seek out such locations as targets. If Yellowstone were to be nuked, the consequences would be catastrophic. First, the explosions would level everything in the surrounding area. Any survivors would have to deal with the immediate aftermath of the blasts, including intense heat, radiation, and a nuclear winter. If the blasts were strong enough, they could trigger an eruption of the supervolcano. The combination of nuclear fallout and volcanic ash would blanket the surrounding states and possibly the entire northern hemisphere in a deadly cloud of debris and radiation. The immediate effects would be devastating. People would be killed or injured by the blasts, buildings and infrastructure would be destroyed, and the environment would be contaminated. The long-term effects would be equally disastrous. The nuclear fallout would contaminate soil and water sources, making them unsafe for humans and wildlife. The volcanic ash would disrupt global climate patterns, leading to a potential ice age. The combination of nuclear fallout and volcanic ash could have devastating effects on human health, causing an increase in cancer and other diseases. It would be an absolute nightmare scenario. So can you burn Yellowstone? Not easily. Can you nuke it? Sure, but you will destroy the entire planet while you're at it. What's next? A meteor? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.